We're back again on Senate Judiciary. This time we're taking up S-309, which is an accolade and miscellaneous changes to laws related to the Department of Motor Vehicles, and buses. And we're trying our best to give our opinion on one particular section of the bill, Section 34 of the bill, which deals with airbags. And Thea Dexter Cooper, from Legislative Council, is here to kind of walk us through what this does. And my understanding is, and Thea is leaving Ledge Council.
I am.
At the end of the week.
Yes.
And we're sorry to see you go, and thank you for all your help over the years. And wish you well the best.
Thank you so much, Senator Sears, and I'm glad that I got to be back with you one more time.
Yeah, and for that reason, Senator Perchlik has asked us to move quickly on this bill to try to, so that Thea can explain it to the House and they can get the bill through the Senate before she leaves.
I hope we'll see if it works out.
So maybe you can tell us what Section 34 does.
Yes, I can. So if you are looking at draft number 3.1 of Senate Transportation's strike all amendment, you're going to want to be on page 35. It's going to run you 35 to 38. It's the second to last section in the bill. So just a teeny bit of history here. This is in Title 39. This is a crime. This is not a part of statute that the transportation committees or me as a drafter spend much time in. It was added in 2002, so it is currently a crime to install something in lieu of an airbag within the parameters of the statute, and it has not been amended since it was added in 2002. I would say the big 30,000-foot view of this section is it is adding some clarity on what would be involved in fraudulently or counterfeitedly or installing an object in lieu of an airbag that would meet the requirements of the crime. And more, I would say significantly, it expands the stages sort of in the supply chain where the crime can occur. So if you look at the language as is currently in statute, it is only applicable to the installation, the reinstallation, or the causing to be installed or reinstalled that would be the triggering act for the crime. But it doesn't have any bearing on if you are manufacturing that counterfeit or non-functional airbag, or importing or distributing or offering it for sale or selling it before getting to that point of installation or reinstallation. So this expands when in the supply chain the crime can take place. And that's language that you see added on line 5 of page 35. So no person shall knowingly manufacture, import, distribute, offer for sale, sell, lease, transfer, install, reinstall, cause to be installed, or cause to be reinstalled. So like anything you can do with an airbag between creating it and putting it into the car, a counterfeit automobile supplement restraint system component, a non-functional airbag, or an object in lieu of any component of the automobile supplement restraint system component, if that object doesn't comply with the strict federal regulations around the supplemental restraint system requirements. What does all of that mean? Well, definitions are added in a new subsection E. That's going to be at the end of the language, and it will define, and we'll get to it, what is a counterfeit automobile supplemental restraint system component? What is a non-functional airbag? So you will see the things that the expanded supply chain point would then apply to. The second prohibition, still no person shall knowingly install or reinstall as an automobile supplemental restraint system component anything that basically causes the car to think that there is a functioning airbag in there when there isn't actually one there. You will notice that that subdivision 2 only applies to the installation or reinstallation, not to those other parts in the supply chain. You'll see a definition of what it means to install or reinstall in subsection E, but the very sort of simple way to think of it is it needs to be the putting of the airbag in, and then the car needs to go back to the owner, or there needs to be a transfer of title. So installation with like exchange of custody of the vehicle.
Might be helpful to understand who the criminal is.
So the criminal would be someone who was making the counterfeit airbags. Someone who was bringing the counterfeit airbags into the United States. Someone who was selling those counterfeit airbags on Amazon or the internet. Someone who was installing it in a car. Someone who was selling it from their garage.
They would have to knowingly install a fraudulent airbag. They
Yes.
don't need to. If they thought it was real, they wouldn't be guilty.
Correct, and we're gonna get to what is a counterfeit automobile supplemental restraint system, which has sort of a specific misuse of the trademark.
It was your question
Oh.
about knowingly. You read my mind.
Okay, so subsections B and C, no changes there except for some grammar changes, which means that the crime's penalty is not changing. Same term of imprisonment, same fine, same terms of imprisonment and fine under subsection B, which is if death results.
No, it's 3-year felony and then 15 years of death results.
Yes,
Or serious bodily injury.
death or serious bodily injury. Nope,
Which,
just death. Nope, serious bodily injury, you're right, death or serious bodily injury. And that is not changing. So even though like the group of people who could be guilty of the crime is getting larger, the penalty is not changing. So it will still be the same penalty that existed when the statute was enacted in 2002.
what is subsection, why is law enforcement?
So I think you will hear about this from the auto manufacturers. This is language that they were asked to include when they were working on this language. I think it was in Virginia. Law enforcement, I do not believe, has weighed in on this particular subsection here. But as I understand it, it has to do with dismantling of airbags when the bars in the back of a police cruiser are installed. And they didn't want that to prohibit them from being able to modify the supplemental restraint system within those vehicles.
Okay.
Okay, and then subsection E, this is where you're going to get all of the definitions that are used. I think the two most important definitions here, although they all kind of like play into each other because some of them are using other definitions in the definition, are going to be subdivision 3 down at line 20. What is a counterfeit automobile supplemental restraint system component? And what is a non-functional airbag? And the reason why I think those are the two most important definitions is because that is what would need to be knowingly installed, manufactured, distributed, etc. So if you are not doing one of those actions to a counterfeit automobile supplemental restraint system component or a non-functional airbag, then you're not guilty of the crime. Phrased differently, if you are manufacturing a airbag or an automobile supplemental restraint system component that meets the federal requirements and doesn't have another entity's trademark on it, you're not guilty of the crime. I think you'll hear from the auto manufacturers as to why there isn't much of an aftermarket business for airbags presently, but this language does not make it a crime to lawfully enter into the aftermarket sale, distribution, installation, etc. of a properly made under federal requirements airbag or component to a supplemental restraint system.
But this doesn't at all restrict who could replace an airbag.
No, provided that.
It doesn't get into it. I know we haven't discussed it, but there's been discussion about the right to repair.
Yes, this
For
is
example,
not
the
getting
cell
there.
phone. So this doesn't affect that.
No, provided that what is being installed is a functional airbag or a component of a supplemental restraint system that is not counterfeit. And a key part of the counterfeit definition is that it needs to have the trademark of another entity on it. And then obviously you're going back to your intent level with it being knowingly.
Senator.
So on that note, would it, if it's not manufactured by the original manufacturer, does it still need to be authorized by the manufacturer to be installed?
My understanding is that if it met the requirements of the Code of Federal Regulation, it would not need to be authorized by the manufacturer. So they're not like a gatekeeper of the aftermarket business, but that at present, there are no aftermarket makers of supplemental restraint systems.
Understood. Thank you.
Bob.
Yeah, quick question.
Senator
On page 1, no person shall knowingly if you read through the manufacturer, import, distribute, blah, 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 so on and so forth, it comes close, but almost is possession, in fact, a violation? Because it doesn't state that here, but if you look at everything here,
No, I think
possession in
provided,
itself is not a violation.
I think if you like wanted to be a collector of counterfeit airbags because you think they look cool, you
Okay.
could have them in your garage and it would not be one of the actions that sort of underlies the crime, provided that you didn't then like sell it in your yard sale knowing that it was a counterfeit airbag after you were done collecting your counterfeit airbags.
Thank you.
Other questions?
And I think people who know more about cars can tell you more of the details about all of the definitions, but I just want to then like re-underline the fact that if it meets the federal requirements, if it doesn't have the trademark on it, it's not going to fall under those two prohibited.
Okay, well, our first witness, thank you.
I'll stick around too.
The first witness is Judith Fencelis. Did I pronounce that properly?
It's
Judith?
Finellis.
Thank you. She's with the State Affairs, the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. Thank you for being with us this morning, and we're pleased to have you testify.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today the auto industry's view on S309 fraudulent airbag. For the record, my name is Judith Finellis, and I am here on behalf of the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation is a DC trade association representing the automakers that manufacture the vast majority of all new cars sold in the US each year, as well as major tier 1 suppliers and other automotive technology companies. Supplemental restraint systems, commonly referred to as airbags, are one of the most important safety features of today's automobile. For many years, these devices have saved countless lives and reduced the severity of injury of those involved in automobile accidents. Counterfeit airbags present a serious public safety risk to consumers. Counterfeit airbags are known to malfunction by either failing to inflate or by inflating incorrectly and expelling dangerous shrapnel. The industry believes regulation of counterfeit airbags will play an important role in maintaining the integrity of this life-saving device. This is a crucial issue for the industry, and our members fully support legislation that aims to combat the selling of counterfeit airbags. I'm happy to have one of our partners in this mission, an expert on the issue, Mr. Craig Orland, Director of State and Local Government Affairs for American Honda Motor Company. Thank you for your time on this important information, and Craig will take it from here. Thank you.
We have copies of Craig's testimony here. Craig, are you on?
I am.
Oh, thank you. Morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And again, let me reiterate Judith's appreciation for you guys taking the time to consider this important consumer safety legislation. So I want to begin by saying that airbag fraud is a very big and real growing problem for our industry. So over the past several years, we've seen foreign and domestic counterfeiters flooding the market with cheap and ineffective knockoff replacement airbags. And these are airbags that are never intended to provide protection in a collision. Many are filled with newspaper, styrofoam, or other debris. Some are just empty airbag covers. And if you go on YouTube, you can see videos that others are quite literally bombs. These products are making their way into the vehicles of unknown consumers and have resulted in deaths and injuries all across the country. And I want to be clear that this isn't a problem with the automotive supply chain. These are replacement airbags that unscrupulous repair shops are buying over the internet and installing in the vehicles of unknown consumers after they've been in an accident. Like many states, Vermont does have an airbag fraud law on the books, and Legislative Council did a phenomenal job sort of summarizing the bill and pointing out the holes that we're trying to plug. In fact, we've done this in 34 states so far. I think she was the best we've seen. Our goal is to prevent more deaths and injuries from happening in the first place. And just to give you a picture of what it is we're trying to fill, while it's impossible to fully know the size and scope of an underground economy, we do know that this is a very real problem and that this bill is going to have an impact on public safety. We've tied these products to deaths and injuries around the country, from Maryland to Texas to California. We've also participated in raids across the country. Through the Takata airbag recall, we found thousands of counterfeit airbags in unknown consumers' cars all over the country. And one man in North Carolina was arrested who made over $1.7 million in under a year selling 7,000 fake airbags. And those airbags were deemed so dangerous that they had to call in the bomb squad to detonate them. They were deemed too dangerous to transport. So I hope that gives you a sense of the problem we're trying to solve, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have. I do remember one that was asked about sort of law enforcement, and again, Ledge Council addressed that very well. Law enforcement has reached out to us in a couple of states. They use certain pit maneuvers, and they have certain devices installed there for the safety of the officers that require them to disable certain airbags. And they just wanted to make sure that they were protected from this law. Again, we've worked with a number of stakeholders. It's not our intention to stop law enforcement or the legitimate selling of vehicles. We just are aiming after the truly bad actors who are knowingly and intentionally transporting these counterfeit airbags in mass.
I guess my question is, if somebody were to install a project or a fake airbag or a defective airbag in my car, would it show up? I mean, I get a notice when my windshield washer fluid is low on my car. The other day I looked at it and, oh my God, what's wrong with my car? And luckily I realized it was only the windshield washer after I looked it up in my manual. But would you get a notice that there's something fraudulent in your car, or not necessarily?
So correct. So in theory, you should, right? The airbags have a diagnostic system that would require a light to go off that says check the airbag. What we're seeing is the installers are installing defeat devices or turning off that switch so that you, the consumer, wouldn't know that. So the vehicle is designed and intended to alert you to that. And Ledge Council spoke to that. That's why we sort of have that language in there about turning off a defeat device, installing a defeat device, or disabling a light that would indicate that to a consumer.
Senator Bowles?
So you mentioned the really extensive airbag recall that I think impacted multiple auto manufacturers. That's not what we're talking about here, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that was not due to counterfeit airbags, but as an aside from that, you discovered counterfeit airbags.
Correct. Takata was a recall where we found out there was a defect in the airbag. Let me back up. The industry used a supplier to produce those airbags. It was the largest recall in history. There was a problem with their process. We went through that. And again, as a result, because under the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Act, consumers had a recall, a remedy there. They notified them. We went and replaced those airbags free of charge. There were liability cases involved there. In the case of a counterfeit, there's no intent that these are ever going to provide people protection. But I mention it because when we went in there and actually started physically replacing airbags, our dealers all across the country were finding airbags that were filled with shop rags and styrofoam. And then we were reporting that to law enforcement and finding out that these were replacement airbags that were bought on eBay and Amazon and Alibaba and other places online. And it just highlights the breadth of the problem. That really made the industry aware of how severe the problem was. We were catching some of these at the border, but thought we were doing a much better job keeping them out of the supply chain than we actually were.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? So I'm looking at where I get, I can go to here in Montpelier. I can go to Montpelier Mazda, Subaru of Berlin, and O'Reilly Auto Parts. Am I getting and have somebody install them, I guess? Do I know that it's going to be a good airbag?
Yeah, so the only place so let me back up. There's only 4 or 5 legitimate airbag manufacturers right now. And airbags are a product that the industry sort of loses money on. It's not profitable, which is why you don't have the aftermarket producing those. Now, there's no law that prevents them from doing that, and this does not change that, as council mentioned, as long as it meets federal safety standards. The only place to get a legitimate OEM airbag is from an authorized dealership under state franchise law. You can get another airbag through a salvage yard or other places, but the only place to get a new airbag is from a dealership. So if Joe's Repair Shop wants to get one, they have to order it from an authorized dealer under state franchise law.
I'm assuming O'Reilly Auto Parts probably has genuine airbags.
Yeah, the general, again, we're not in the aftermarket part of the business, but our general understanding of the reason why they're not interested in doing it is that there's liability, there's it's very expensive, there's low volume. Again, if an airbag is going to deploy, it means a vehicle has been in a collision that's fairly severe, but not severe enough to total it. So again, there's just not the same sort of volume that you have on a fender blade.
Thank you. Yes.
So I hear your explanation as to why there aren't a lot of aftermarket airbags, but there's nothing in this law that would prevent a functional so if a market became available that was not only through dealerships, that is still allowable.
Correct, as long as it meets federal motor vehicle safety standards.
Thank you. Any other questions? So committee, is there any changes to this, or do you want to just let transportation know we approve it?
I'm fine with it.
Very good. Well, done 10 minutes early.
That was the fastest bill we've.
That was probably the fastest thing we've done this year.
Probably, but I'm glad we took a look at it and learned about airbags.
We're ready to adjourn?
Huh?
Ready to adjourn?
Are you gonna be in Gov Ops this afternoon?
Yes, I am.
We'll see you there.
See you there.
Airbags.
Are we good to adjourn?
We're good to adjourn.
All right.
Thank you very much.